Hello and welcome to another episode of Retrospective Gaming. In this episode I am reviewing Wasteland 1. Two things before we move on. One, there are minor spoilers in this review. You have been warned. And two, I am playing the version that was re-released a couple of years ago. It's called Wasteland 1 The Original Classic. It really doesn't add much. It added a soundtrack and that was pretty cool. And the option to smooth graphics out and add high definition portraits. I turned both those options off, and with that being said, here is my review of Wasteland 1. The story starts off in the year 2087. The world is still trying to recover from a nuclear war that happened in 1988, and this event left the world in shambles. Your team is a part of the group, the prestigious group called the Desert Rangers, and after you're done creating your party or using the default one, you are let out of the Ranger Center and you're off to explore the wasteland. That's how the story starts off in this game. Now, Wasteland is a game that surprised me. It was released in 1988 and it's one of the influences behind Fallout. In fact, the developer Interplay also released Fallout 9 years later after this game came out in 1988. And as soon as I started the game, I figured out that Wasteland is the definition of old school. I was thrown out into the world with barely any clues. Even if you read the manual before playing the game, it just tells you how the world got to the way it is now. You have to go out and explore each city, each town, and cover every area. And when I mean cover every area, I mean go inside each building, check everything, use your perception skill, things like that, because it's very easy to miss something in a game like this. This was back in the days when you had to write stuff down because they weren't going to repeat it again, and it could get lost in everything and you might forget a clue of how to progress further into the story. You have to know the right things to say to people, because when you talk to people, it gives you a little box and you have to type in something and they won't respond to anything. They won't really respond to much. You have to type in certain things. So you have to write stuff down, you have to remember something, either write it in a notepad, take a screen cap of it, because it's very easy to miss something in this game. And some people, when they play this game, they might mistake it, or they have mistaken it for this game not having any story, or it being too confusing to progress further into the game. I personally don't think it's too hard to figure out what's going on. This is just from a different period of time where you had to really write down everything and really remember each clue, each conversation you have, because it's easy to miss stuff. And I was surprised because I had that initial impression when I first played the game that there's not much going on and I won't find much. I'll just kill this, kill that, kill rats and stuff like that. But as I went further into the game, there was a lot of stuff that was interesting to me. For example, in one area called Needles, I was going into the town because my Jeep broke down, and all of a sudden I'm trying to figure out what's going on with this one area called the Temple of Blood, where there's this crazy cult and they're doing some really shady shit and you have to explore and figure out what's going on. And in another area called the Guardian Citadel, as soon as you enter the place, it's an all-out war. It's guarded by these monks. I would call them monks, and they're very introverted. They don't want any trespassers, and as soon as they see you, you have to fight them in order to get inside the building. And in another area called Courts, the mayor has been held hostage by a group of thugs, and of course you have to save the day and fight these fucking bandits. You will fight this one enemy in Wasteland called the Bunny Master. Another example, you will run into this prostitute and she can give you wasteland herpes, and I think this prostitute is mutated, like she got 2 heads or 4 legs or something like that. And yeah, this fucking bitch gives you wasteland herpes. And by the way, something off topic really quick, how the fuck do you heal any sort of STD in a wasteland where there's not many resources? Fuck man, it's like a gamble in that world to have sex. Where the fuck are the condoms at? But yeah, you can get stuff like that, so you definitely see some humorous moments in this game. And with the main story, eventually when you reach an area called Las Vegas, that's where it really starts to pick up. I'm not going to spoil much, but what I will tell you is that as soon as you go inside Las Vegas, And as soon as you enter the city, you are attacked by homicidal robots with names like Roid Mark and Splicer Dicers. And the Splicer Dicers are these tall robots, and to me they are annoying because they're just like the Enclave in Fallout 2. They don't look anything alike or anything like that, but like their tactics, they jump you, and there's so many of them, and they can be a pain in the ass, at least to me. And you have to figure out what's going on with these robots, who made them, and why did they make them, why are they attacking you, why are they attacking people. And that's when the main quest really starts to develop. I'm not going to spoil more, there is more to that. I only gave you a portion of what the main quest is. And it sort of reminds me of the main quest in Fallout 1. There are similarities. In Fallout 1, you're doing these little tasks until you run into the super mutant army. You hear about them, and then it becomes clear. There are all these super mutants running around, and you have to figure out what's going on. And in Wasteland 1, you're doing these side quests, you're doing these little tasks until you run into these homicidal robots, the robot army, and you have to figure out what's going on with them. So you'll definitely see similarities between Fallout and Wasteland because this is one of the inspirations behind Fallout. So of course you're going to see that. So overall, I did enjoy this story. I did enjoy the side quests. I really like how the developers took the time to give each area their own little short story or subplot or however you call it. And especially back in this time with the technical limitations, it's really impressive to me. I do have some minor complaints about the story. I do wish they would have added a couple of more areas, maybe one or two. I think they could have gotten away with it. The game is short, especially for an RPG. It's not as long as I thought it would have been, but maybe this is due to it being 1988 when this was released. I don't know. And in some areas, I wish they would have given you a little bit of hand-holding. Now, I'm not a fan of hand-holding, but just give us a pinky in some of these areas because this is very open. It's definitely about you finding everything out for yourself, but just a little direction in some areas because I literally had to search the whole place up and down 2 or 3 times. Now maybe that's due to me having ADHD and I don't really pay attention, but I'm gonna put that as one of my minor complaints. But overall, I did enjoy the story, and luckily, if you play the re-release that came out a couple of years ago, instead of looking at the manual every time you enter a city, you can click on the red text and you see a narration and you can read paragraphs, and it helps explain the lore. So there is stuff there, you just have to really pay attention. Let's talk about gameplay. Now, in Wasteland 1, the depth of the gameplay comes from how you use your character's different skills and different attributes. It's definitely not from the combat. Let's get this out the way right now. Combat is very simple. It's very outdated. You just see your turns play out by watching text scroll up on the screen. That's it. That's all you see. You can have different options like attack, run, and different options with different guns like auto, burst, or single. But you just see text scroll, so that's what combat is. I just choose to make it go real fast because it's nothing exciting, it's outdated. But that doesn't mean there's nothing to do and there's nothing to strive for. Your characters have different skills like picklock, medic, doctor, safecrack, rifle, and some really interesting ones like clone tech, cyborg tech, and pugilism, and that just means boxing. And with these different skills, it helps you in different ways. For example, the leader of my party, Che, that's me, is really good at picking locks, and that helped out a lot. I got so much loot just from picking locks, and it let me go into certain areas that I couldn't have if I didn't have this skill. And another skill that my character Che was good at is perception. Perception is a lifesaver. I loved using it. It lets you see things that you would not be able to see without perception, and in this game, it's very important. And another example, my other character Jade was a medic, and that saved me so many times. It saved me hundreds of dollars in doctor's visits, and it literally saved the lives of my party members so many times. Although Jade did die and I have to create a Jade number 2. That happens, the wasteland is tough. And my other character, Nihilus, was really good at holding a rifle and safe cracking, and I didn't think I would need that skill when I picked it in the beginning, but it helped me get some loot that I wouldn't have gotten any other way. So the skills are definitely the deepest part about the gameplay, and your attributes too. When you roll the dice and you can level up your attributes, it really helps. For example, your IQ attribute, it determines what skills you can get. The higher IQ, the smarter you are, and the smarter you are, the more skills you can learn. And having a high IQ really helped one of my characters. He was good in this skill called cryptology, and it helped him figure out passwords. So these skills let you play the game in different ways, and it's important to have a party that's filled with characters that have a lot of different skills so you can get the most out of the game. Now this game will remind you of a lot of RPGs that came out after it. When you use your different skills like pick locking, they level up, and you can go to libraries and train your skills. And the way you level up in this game is when you get experience, you have to radio in your general or whoever, and if you have enough experience, you will level up, you get points, and you can put them into your different attributes, raise up your constitution, which is your health. This game is much deeper than I thought, and there is an element of survival. This is the Wasteland after all. Your characters can get seriously hurt and degrade over time, and if you don't pay attention to them by either having a character that's a medic or a doctor and is good in those skills, or you don't have a lot of money or you don't get to a doctor, then your character can die and you either have to replace them, make another ranger, or you just have to deal with it because they're a character that you hired and you have to find another one. So you have to pay attention to your characters. Make sure you have someone that's a medic or a doctor in your party. As I said before, the most important thing you will do in this game is explore. Make sure you check every area, every blade of grass, every spot on the screen. Make sure you don't miss anything. Make sure you write stuff down or you take screen caps or you got a really good fucking memory. And make sure you pay attention first and foremost because this game does not hold your hand and it's easy to get lost. This is truly about exploring this wasteland. I do have some issues with the gameplay. Number one, the combat is boring and it's outdated. It's just text scrolling on a screen, nothing special. Two, there are some graphical stuff that can get annoying over time, but it didn't make me turn off the game. It was just annoying. For example, your character will be going throughout the world and sometimes you get this weird flickering and sometimes you'll see different areas scroll in a weird way. And with the version of the game that I played, it's very inconvenient sometimes because the game crashes and when you have to quit the game, it takes you straight back to the desktop. I wish there was more save states and there was an option to turn autosave off because you can call it cheating, but sometimes I don't want the game to save in a certain spot because I fucked myself over. And I'm going to give you a tip. If you don't learn to use the hotkeys, the UI, the interface is going to be terrible. You're going to hate it. Make sure you learn how to use the hotkeys efficiently. But overall, it's the skills, it's the different attributes, and it's how you build and use your party that will keep you playing, and I enjoyed that aspect of the gameplay. Let's talk about sound and atmosphere. Now when it comes to sound, there is not much to talk about. I enjoyed the soundtrack, I thought it was great, and the re-release also added some narration. You'll hear someone talking and it explains the lore of that area or situation, and I had no problems with it. When it comes to atmosphere, I think Interplay did a great job, especially with the technical limitations that they had back in the late 80s. When you explore this world that is still affected by this nuclear apocalypse that happened almost 100 years back in that time, you're going to see a lot of crazy shit. You're going to see feral animals, you're going to see crazy humans, you're going to see killer robots, you're going to see cardinals, you're going to see monks. You will go into this one area where you deal with a fucked up cult. You can kill kids. You go into this one building called the Church of the Mushroom Cloud, and in this building there are a bunch of crazy people and they always talk about this thing called the glow. Speaking of the glow, I know a lot of you thought about a certain game when I said that. I think Wasteland 1 did a great job of getting us involved, getting us engrossed in the atmosphere. Yeah, the graphics are outdated. This did come out in 1988. There's no way around it. The graphics are outdated. But I still think they did a great job with the colors and showing us the different things like the radiation symbols. And my favorite thing about the graphics are the character portraits. When you see these different portraits that pop up during combat or during a conversation, they're colorful and there's a lot of detail in them. So there's a lot to see in this game. You just got to give it a chance if you want to. Thank you for watching another episode. If you want, you can leave a comment, you can message me on Twitter. You know how to get into contact with me. Have a great day.